The world is at war. Europe lies in ruins after the German invasion and the advance of Nazi troops. Across the ocean, in the interior of the United States, life seems too peaceful. In the small rural towns of Kansas, Ohio, or Iowa, time passes slowly, as if the war were just a distant story told on the radio or printed in newspapers that arrive late. You're 21 years old. You've never left your home state, never seen the Atlantic Ocean, and have only heard of airplanes flying overhead and occasional conversations with neighbors who've traveled to the big city. Your world is limited to cornfields, the smell of wet earth after rain, and the sound of crickets at night. War? You know there's a man named Hitler trying to dominate Europe. You heard it on the radio in the town market, where the men gather after work to discuss the latest news. But to you, it all seems distant, something that would never reach your daily life in the countryside. You're the son of simple farmers, your skin scarred by the sun and your hands calloused from hard work. You spend your days chopping wood, tending animals, and plowing the land with your father. In 1942, the United States already had over 130 million inhabitants. But to you, living in the countryside, it seems as if the entire country is summed up by your community, made up of farmers who work from sunrise to sunset. Corn, wheat, and soybeans are the basis of the region's economy. You hear your father talk about prices in Chicago, where the grains are sold. But to you, they're just distant numbers. Your reality is waking up early, putting on your boots still damp with dew, and heading out to the fields with a hoe on your shoulders. That year, life in the American countryside was like this: dirt roads, isolated wooden houses, and small towns with only a few thousand inhabitants. Most people had never left, and many had never even seen the ocean. Your world ends where the horizon meets the hills, and for you that's enough. Until now. It's a typical morning in 1942. You wake up before sunrise, as always. The smell of your mother's freshly brewed coffee fills the wooden kitchen as you prepare for another day of work in the fields. Outside, frost covers the grass, and the cold wind bites your face. On the way to the small grocery store in town, where you usually buy flour and sugar, something catches your eye. A group of men are gathered around a large radio, the kind that looks more like a piece of furniture than a device. The volume is turned up, and everyone listens in silence. The announcer's voice talks about German submarines that attacked American merchant ships in the Atlantic. The older ones frown, worried. Some say President Roosevelt won't let this go. Others, more skeptical, comment that the war is still too far away to affect their lives back home. You don't quite understand what it means, but the mood in the air is different. That day, you return home with the sack of flour on your shoulders, but your head full of questions. What exactly is this war? How could something happening halfway around the world change your predictable routine? A few weeks pass, and the news seems increasingly filled with war. The radio talks about Pearl Harbor, about soldiers being drafted, about a nation now officially in combat. Yet, in their small community, the rhythm remains much the same. The crops continue to grow, the roosters continue to crow, and the work continues relentlessly. Until one day, when you least expect it, a mailman shows up at your door. You'd never received a letter before. That's something only important people in town do. But there it was, an envelope with your name on it. Your hands tremble as you open it. The words are formal, difficult to understand at first, but the message is clear. You've been drafted. You must report to the nearest military enlistment center within 2 weeks. Your heart races. You look at your father, who presses his lips together in silence. Your mother, teary-eyed, clutches the cloth of her apron to her chest. Some neighbors will say it's an honor to serve your country. Others will call it a death sentence. But in the end, you have no choice. The hills surrounding your village have never seemed so small. The horizon, which once limited your world, now seems to open up to something immense, terrifying, and inevitable. War. The day of departure arrives sooner than you imagined. It's still dark when the bus engine begins to roar on the dirt road in front of your house. Your mother holds your face with both hands for a moment longer than usual. Your father gives you a single, strong hug, the kind that says what words can't. You climb in with your simple suitcase, 2 shirts, an extra pair of socks, your grandfather's small Bible, and take a seat near the window. The cold glass fogs up with your breath. The road to the big city looks like a different thing from the bus. Fences pass by like gray lines, fields become blurs. When dawn finally breaks, you see silos and water towers dotting the sky. Signs announce cities you've only heard of. Topeka, Des Moines, Kansas City. Wherever they take you, there'll be someone waiting on the other side with a clipboard and a list of names. At the central station, the noise almost pushes you back. Vendors shout, train whistles, hurried footsteps in every direction. Signs shine brightly on high counters, and people seem to know exactly where to go. You don't. A man with an army armband points the way. Induction center. Draftees, this way. You follow the flow of young men like you, some laughing loudly to hide their nervousness, others silent, clutching envelopes with crumpled documents. In the enlistment building, the world becomes a line. Line to hand in the letter, line to sign the form, line to answer questions you never knew anyone would ever ask about you. A sergeant with a firm voice repeats the same instructions to each group. Shoes and socks in hand, shirt on the hanger. Single line. Next. The medical examination is impersonal and rushed. White rooms, smells of alcohol and disinfectant. One doctor asks you to read letters on a distant piece of cardboard. Another presses a cold stethoscope against your chest. A third pokes your shoulder with a needle to test your reflexes. Vaccinations follow one after the other. A burning sensation in your left arm, then your right. Relax your shoulder, a nurse says. You try. There's an awkward moment when everyone is lined up in their underwear, waiting for the next move. Someone makes a joke, another responds, but the laughter quickly dies down. No one wants to be the first to look scared. The most common word heard in the hallway is, next. A corporal stamps tokens with a sharp tap that echoes like a small verdict. After the exam, they hand you an olive green bag, your first duffel bag. Inside, a rough uniform, a pair of combat boots that seem too heavy for your feet, a cap with an insignia, and a belt with a buckle. They push you into a wooden chair. The barber clips without asking. The sound is short, definitive. Hair on the floor like leaves on a windy day. You look in the mirror for a second. Your face is the same, but something is different. Maybe it's the cut. Maybe it's what comes next. In the courtyard, platoons form like lines of a well-marked harvest. A sergeant walks between the ranks, observing, and announces destinations as if reading forecasts. Fort Riley, Fort Leonard Wood, Camp Roberts, Fort Benning. You hear your name and, along with it, the place you're going. No matter what it is, you just nod. Yes, sir. A new expression, still lingering on the tongue. The train ride to the training camp is a long sequence of windows and landscapes. Cars crammed with young people, smelling of new wool and hair pomade. The metallic creak of the wheels spurs conversations that ebb and flow. Where you're from, what your city is like, if you've seen the ocean, if you've left a girlfriend, what you hope to find on the other side. The guy in the seat in front talks non-stop. He's from Chicago. He says the buildings there touch the sky. To your right, a tall Texan, hat in his lap, smiles with his eyes, and offers a piece of beef jerky wrapped in paper. You share stories as if exchanging stickers from a shared childhood that never existed. When the train stops and you disembark, the training camp looks like a city unto itself. Barracks lined up, water towers, a large mess hall, dirt running tracks, a shooting range in the distance like a darker rectangle on the horizon. A loudspeaker blares, announcing schedules. A sergeant repeats, New Year's Eve at 5 a.m., full uniform, formation in the yard. If you're late, you'll find out what a long day it is. There's no doubt he means it. At first light, the sound of the bugle pierces the darkness. You leap from the wooden bed, the thin mattress, the woolen blanket scratching your neck. Within minutes, you're standing in the courtyard, lined up, trying to figure out how to align your body. The cold bites your ears. Everyone's breath forms small clouds. The sergeant walks, hands behind his back, his voice firm and sharp. Shoulders back, chin down, eyes forward. Breathe through your nose. You're not farm boys anymore. You're recruits in the United States Army. The first few weeks are a ritual of transformation. Running with a backpack, doing push-ups until your arms tremble, squats that burn your thighs, marching. Marching more. Learning to turn right and left without thinking, as if your body were learning a new language. In the cafeteria, the smell of strong coffee and scrambled eggs permeates everything. The metal tray hits the counter with a hollow sound. You learn where to sit, when to get up, how to make your bed with your impeccable tailcoat, how to fold your uniform into the required shape, as if each fold were a line in a sheet of music. At the shooting range, the first time with the M1 Garand, the cold metal in your palm, the serious weight against your shoulder. An instructor shows you how to check the chamber, how to keep your finger off the trigger until the right moment, how to align the front sight with the target. The recoil surprises you, a short punch to the shoulder, and the smell of gunpowder fills your chest. When the target is retracted with a dark hole in the white marking, a mixture of pride and fear surges. You wonder what this gesture means outside of there. There's also what no one tells in stories: the hurry up and wait. Running to formation, running to the bus, running to the mess hall, and then waiting. Waiting for the rain to stop. Waiting for the officer to arrive. Waiting for the time. Time in the army is a sequence of interrupted emergencies. In between, the letters. You learn to write simply, directly, as if each line were a thread tying you to home. I'm fine. The training is tough. The food is good. I'm thinking of you. You don't write about fear. There's no room for it on the page. At night, in the shed, conversations are low. Someone tells a fishing story. Another talks about the lights of New York, which he once saw from afar when his uncle's car passed over the bridge. There's a guy from Alabama who plays the harmonica carefully so as not to wake the sergeants. The notes rise softly, as if searching for a ceiling higher than the wooden one. You close your eyes and see the countryside, the cornfield moving in the wind, your porch, your mother waving from the door. For a few moments the sound of the crickets and the distant train seem the same. Training isn't all sweat and dust. There are classes in simple rooms, maps hanging on the walls, arrows showing routes and lines that climb and descend imaginary mountains. They rehearse hand signals, first aid, and assembling and disassembling the rifle with their eyes closed, like a fairground trick that ultimately saves lives. One day they lead you to a small hut where they release tear gas for a few seconds. Masks. The burning sensation in your eyes and throat teaches you faster than any book. Some can't take it anymore and return home on doctor's orders. A knee that can't handle the miles. A lung that refuses to keep up. They leave on a gray morning by bus, leaving empty beds that are occupied that same afternoon by others who arrived by train. You realize that everything here moves like a combine harvester. Constant, inevitable, impersonal. At the end of the third week, there's a long march. Your backpack weighs as if it were filled with stones. Boots blister and burn. The line winds along dirt paths, up and down hills. The sergeant walks at your pace, sometimes in front, sometimes beside, sometimes behind, and says almost nothing. When they finally stop, you sit on the ground and drink water, like someone finding shade after crossing a desert. The sergeant looks at the group, clears his throat. You're starting to understand. It's not just about running. It's about moving forward together. On a Sunday afternoon, they allow you to write slowly. You describe the sky at the training camp, a blue that seems wider than the one in the countryside, and tell us about the metallic-tasting coffee you tasted in the mess hall mug, that the sound of the M1 still echoes on your shoulder, that the nights here have a different silence, not the silence of crickets, but a silence that appears after everyone has fallen silent from exhaustion. You fold the letter carefully, and, as you affix the stamp, imagine the path it will take to your mailbox. Time here is measured in small lessons. How to shine your boots until you see your face reflected in them. How to adjust your belt so it doesn't slip while running. How to breathe at the right pace so you don't lose your breath on the last stretch. And without realizing it, your body adapts. Your uniform doesn't scratch as much anymore. Your boots obey. Your pace matches the pace of others. The dawn horn no longer scares you. It simply warns you that another day has begun. At night, lying in your narrow bed, you think, you haven't seen the sea yet, but one day you will. They say that when training is over, you'll head to the East Coast. They say there are ships on the Hudson that look like floating buildings, that the lights of Manhattan make the sky glow, that the wind on the pier is cold and smells of salt. You don't know when that will be, but you know this path now has a direction. From the countryside to the city, from the city to the sea, from the sea to a continent you only know by the names the instructors pronounce on the board. Naples, Anzio, Tuscany. For now, though, all that exists is the next dawn, the next formation, the next march. And the quiet certainty growing without you saying it aloud. The world is bigger than the hills of your childhood, and yet, somewhere inside you the hills are still there, standing firm, waiting for you to one day recognize them again by the smell of hay and the sound of the wind. Time in boot camp passes quickly, but each day feels like an eternity. The first weeks of adaptation are behind us. Now, the focus is on transforming recruits into soldiers capable of facing the enemy. Training is no longer just physical, it's mental, strategic, and immersive. At dawn, after the bugle blares through the silence of the night, you're taken on long runs with your backpacks loaded. The terrain is uneven, with hills and mud, simulating the obstacles you'll face in Europe. Your body is screaming, but the sergeants shout louder than any pain. Keep moving, soldier. Each week, the training becomes more intense. You learn to assemble and disassemble the M1 Garand rifle in seconds, even blindfolded. At the shooting range, the instructions become more complex. Firing on the move, reloading under pressure, advancing in a line. The smell of gunpowder becomes as common as the smell of bread served at breakfast. There are also tactical classes. In simple barracks, instructors draw maps on the board, highlighting the importance of patrol formations, and explaining how to use the cover of trees, walls, and trenches. You learn hand signals, ambush strategies, and combat first aid. Theory is followed by practice. Simulation exercises in open areas, marching silently, attentive to every signal from the leader. On a rainy afternoon, you are taken to what they call gas chamber training. In a small hut, the air is filled with tear gas. The order is clear: put on your mask and resist. Some fail, coughing and crying, but everyone quickly learns to trust the equipment. The lesson is simple. In war, mistakes cost lives. In the dorm, the community grows closer. You discover different accents and stories. A boy from Texas who talks about rodeos as if they were battles. A boy from California who describes the Pacific beaches as a distant paradise. And a boy from New York who never tires of telling how the city lights never go out. Between letters written at night and hushed conversations before bed, friendships are born that seem stronger than blood. Over time, you notice your body has changed. The muscles, once lean from working in the fields, are now firmer. Your step, once hesitant, now keeps pace with the others. You no longer feel fear when you hear the trumpet, but a strange anticipation. Another day, another test. Then comes the announcement everyone has been waiting for and dreading. Training is over. Soon, you'll be heading to the East Coast, where you'll embark for Europe. The news spreads through the barracks like wildfire. Some celebrate, excited by the idea of finally seeing action. Others remain silent, the weight of uncertainty etched on their faces. In the final week, there's a review parade. Senior officers come to assess the troops. You march with gleaming boots, neat uniforms, and gleaming rifles. The sun reflects off the metal like a calculated spectacle. The sergeant, usually hard and cold, lets out a rare compliment. Now, you look like real soldiers. That night, you write another letter home. You tell them you'll soon see the sea for the first time, that you've heard about the enormous ships in New York, ready to carry thousands of men across the ocean. You don't mention your fear, just say you're fine, that you're thinking about them, and that, God willing, you'll return safely. On the last day, you pack your duffel bags, hand out your training materials, and receive clear instructions. Boarding towards the port soon, the silence in the shed is different. It's no longer the sound of nervous newcomers laughing, but a heavy calm, as if everyone knows the life they once knew is behind them. You lie down on the thin bed one last time, close your eyes, and think of the hills of your childhood, the smell of earth after rain, the swaying of crops in the wind. From now on, your path will take you farther than you ever imagined. The train carrying you and your companion passes through cities and countryside until it reaches the East Coast. It's autumn, and the trees near the tracks display red and gold leaves. Outside the window, the scenery changes. Farms give way to factories, warehouses, and busy streets. When the whistle announces your arrival at the final station, you realize you've never been in a place so vast. Nova York. As soon as you step off the train, the The noise and energy of the city seem to engulf you. Cars honk incessantly, trams crisscross the streets, crowds hurried in every direction. In the distance, immense buildings cut through the sky. You'd never imagined anything so tall. Some fellow passengers smile in awe, others just stare in silence, trying to take it all in. From the Hudson River dock, the view is even more striking. Rows of transport ships lined up, steel giants that look like floating buildings. The wind is cold, bringing the salty smell of the ocean mixed with the odor of fuel and rust. You pull your coat tighter, and for the first time, see the sea, an infinite blue that disappears into the horizon. Before boarding, there's a quick formation. Officers distribute orders and checklists of names. Then, each soldier climbs the metal ramp that leads into the ship. The sound of boots against steel echoes in an almost hypnotic rhythm. As you cross the deck, you look back and see the Statue of Liberty rising in the distance, a symbol you'd only seen in photographs. Life on board is a challenge in itself. More than 5,000 men share narrow corridors and bunks stacked 3 or 4 levels high. The smell of sweat, oil, and canned food fills the air. In the mess hall, meals are quick: beans, canned meat, bread, and strong coffee. Seasickness soon sets in. The constant rocking of the ship makes many feel sick the first few nights, you included. Over time, you find ways to pass the time. Some play cards on makeshift crates as tables. Others write letters home, though they don't know when or if they'll arrive. On deck, weather permitting, a radio plays songs by Glenn Miller, Bing Crosby, and the Andrews Sisters. The gentle melodies contrast with the harsh reality of the crossing, bringing a brief comfort. You befriend 2 soldiers who share a nearby bunk. A young man from Ohio named Thomas, who talks constantly about going back to marry his girlfriend, and a Texan named Robert, who hides his nervousness behind jokes. At night, you talk in hushed tones, as if the ocean can hear. Sometimes the silence on board is broken by emergency alarms. Crews practice rapid evacuations, simulating German submarine attacks. The order is clear: keep your helmet handy and know exactly where your life jacket is. Each siren reminds everyone that, even far from Europe, war is already close. 2 weeks drag by. Gray days and cold nights. The ocean is immense and unforgiving. The constant rocking makes you lose track of time. Only sunrises and sunsets, seen from the deck, mark the passing of the days. You write in your improvised journal, "Today the sea seems bigger than the world, but I still think about the hills of my city and the smell of the countryside." Finally, on a foggy morning, the order to disembark arrives. The ship approaches the port of Naples, Italy. The sight is devastating. Buildings in ruins, smoke rising from broken chimneys, sunken ships still floating like skeletons at the dock. The distant sound of explosions reminds you that war isn't just a story on the radio. Now, it's right in front of you. As you set foot on European soil for the first time, you feel the chill in the air and the strong smell of gunpowder mixed with the dust. You look around. Allied soldiers rush past, speaking languages you barely understand. A new, dark, and frightening world opens up. You take a deep breath. The training is over. The real test is just beginning. Disembarking in Naples is chaotic. You descend the ship's metal ramp, feeling the ground tremble under the weight of thousands of boots. The air is cold, a far cry from the humid, hot climate of the American countryside you've known. The smell of smoke, gunpowder, and sewage mingles with the wind. Before you, the city is a portrait of destruction. Buildings with open facades, broken windows, streets strewn with rubble, and children eyeing the arriving soldiers suspiciously. The port looks like a ship graveyard. Sunken vessels still partially float, their masts like skeletons pointing to the sky. You are organized into columns and led through the streets to a makeshift meeting point, where Allied officers give brief instructions. English, French, and Italian blend into a confusing chorus of orders. You realize you're not just in another country, but in another world. The first barracks is a former school converted into barracks. The walls are stained with smoke, but there are makeshift beds and space to store equipment. That night, lying on a thin mattress, you hear the distant sound of artillery. Each explosion sounds like thunder, reminding you that war is always near. The next day, the sergeant announces the first mission: patrol a small Italian village on the outskirts of Naples. The objective is simple: ensure there's no enemy activity in the area. But you soon discover that in war, nothing is truly simple. Walking along the cobblestone road, you observe the residents' gazes. Some offer water, others simply close their doors when the soldiers pass. The village seems frozen in time, with stone houses and small vegetable gardens, but tension hangs in the air. Every shadow seems to hide something. Every window could be a threat. During patrol, your heart races with every unexpected sound. A dog barking, a door slamming, the wind sweeping branches across the ground. You feel the weight of the rifle in your hands as if it were an extension of your own body. At the same time, you wonder if you'll have the courage to use it when the time comes. At night, the company divides into shifts. It's your turn to stand watch when a plane streaks across the sky with a deafening roar. You don't know if it's friend or foe, but instinctively, you drop to the ground. Your heart seems to beat faster than the sound of the engines. The sergeant simply shouts, "Keep your eyes open, soldier." In the silence that follows, you realize the magnitude of what you're experiencing. This is just a routine patrol, but the fear is real, palpable. You think of home, of quiet nights in the countryside, the sound of crickets and the smell of earth, and you wonder if you'll ever have that back. The next morning, you return to your barracks, exhausted, but alive. The officers report it as a success. No enemy activity was found. But for you, the victory was something else. Discovering that despite your fear, you managed to move forward. Lying back on your mattress, you write a letter home. You tell them you're fine, that you saw a sea unlike anything you'd imagined, that you're serving with honor. But you omit the details of the fear, the cold, the loneliness. The words are simple, but they carry enormous weight. I'm alive. I think about you every day. A few weeks pass at a pace that blends waiting and tension. The distant sound of cannons never completely fades. You're already accustomed to marches, patrols, and night guards, but everyone knows the true test is yet to come. Then, on a freezing morning, the orders arrive. You will support an offensive in the Italian mountains, part of the so-called Gothic Line, a fortified German position. The sergeant speaks firmly, but nervousness spreads in each recruit's eyes. The walk to the position is silent, only the squelch of boots against the mud and the creak of heavy backpacks. The terrain is difficult. The mountains seem endless, and the mist covers the path like a blanket. At times you have to crawl under barbed wire, at others, take cover behind stone walls. Every step is accompanied by the expectation that something might happen. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by the roar of gunfire. Bullets ricochet off the rocks, and the troops instinctively drop to the ground. Your heart races like never before. You feel the rifle heavy against your chest, your hands trembling, your breath shallow. The sergeant shouts orders. "Return fire! Cover the flank! Move! Move!" You crawl through the mud, looking for a position to shoot. You pull the trigger, and the rifle's report echoes in your ears. You don't know if you hit anyone, but the mere act of firing back feels surreal. The smell of gunpowder, the billowing smoke, the screams. It all creates a scene that seems far removed from the peaceful hills of your childhood. The exchange of fire lasts a few minutes, but each second feels like an eternity. When the enemy finally retreats, silence returns, but it's not the same. Two comrades are wounded, one seriously. Field medics rush to stabilize them, while the rest of the troops watch in silence, feeling the weight of war for the first time. That night, while on guard duty, you look up at the starry sky and think of home. You think of the countryside, your family, the life that seemed so simple before. You write another letter, but this time you hesitate. How can you put into words what you've just experienced? In the end, you simply write, "I'm fine. Pray for me." Days turn into weeks, and weeks into months. Each mission brings new challenges, new fears, new scars. The life you knew in rural America already seems like a distant dream. Now, your world is made up of muddy boots, rapid-fire orders, gunshots that come out of nowhere, and the constant doubt of whether you'll see the next dawn. Yet, amidst the chaos, you discover something you never imagined: the ability to move forward even when fear is overwhelming. You discover the strength of camaraderie, the value of sharing a piece of bread or a memory of home with those beside you in the trenches. You discover that even in war, there are moments of silence when the sound of the wind between the Italian mountains brings back memories of who you are. You know you'll never be the same again. War transforms, scars, hardens, but it also teaches you that the simple life that seemed so small, the cornfield, the smell of the earth, your mother's smile, your father's voice, was, in fact, all that mattered most. And so, as you close your eyes on a cold night, rifle propped at your side, you wonder if you'll ever return to the hills you left behind. If you'll see the horizon of your childhood again. If you'll have the chance to tell your story. Only the future will tell.